Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you had a good rest and then good lunch and then energized for this important session on the ASEAN Power Grid, powering ASEAN's green future. I'm Hyunjung Lee, GMS ASEAN Energy Program Lead at ADB. You can call me HJ. To kick off today's events, we'd like to invite Mr. Winfred Wickline, our Director General of the Southeast Asia Department at Asian Development Bank. So, Vinny, please get on the stage and the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, esteemed delegates, participants, and colleagues. I'm super excited to welcome you here this afternoon to this session on the ASEAN Power Grid, powering ASEAN's future. The discussion around the ASEAN Power Grid, of course, has a long history, goes back some 20 or 30 years, but more recently, it has gained new momentum, and I believe that we now may have reached a really critical inflection point in our journey towards the regional power grid in ASEAN. So what has changed? Well, in a nutshell, I believe what has changed or what has happened is that a new sense of urgency has created a really strong momentum now that I believe provides a unique opportunity for ASEAN. Countries around the regions have made ambitious net zero commitments. The clean energy transition requires huge investments to upgrade national power grids, to support the rollout of very ambitious renewable energy plans. Bilateral power trade between ASEAN countries is increasing. For example, the recent projects such as the monsoon wind project between Laos PDR and Vietnam. There's also successful piloting of multilateral trade routes from Laos PDR to Singapore, the interconnect of which I believe is being upgraded as we speak, and that has paved the way for larger scale collaboration as well. On top of that, the increasing demand for clean energy, as experienced, for instance, by Singapore Energy Market Authority's 4 gigawatt clean energy import initiative, has fueled the momentum to develop regional interconnections via land and via sea. The ASEAN region is also seeing an unprecedented level of support from the region's leaders, as evidenced by Cambodia's energy minister, His Excellency Ratanak, in his call to action at the opening session of this very conference the other day. So we believe the ASEAN Power Grid presents really a transformative opportunity for ASEAN to drive its green future and to facilitate the region's energy transition. A unified ASEAN grid will efficiently integrate diverse renewable energy sources into the grid on a much larger scale, making stable, clean energy available for all, reducing reliance on fossil fuels and accelerating the region's energy transition. Increased cross-border trade of renewable energy will also strengthen energy security. It will support price stability, and it will drive economic growth in ASEAN. So against this backdrop, we are at ADB very excited to work with ASEAN to achieve the ASEAN Power Grid vision. As you know, we've positioned ourselves as the climate bank of the region. We have extensive experience in supporting national and regional energy initiatives and interconnection projects across the larger Asia and the Pacific region. We have mechanisms, we have instruments in place that can be deployed for such complex regional initiatives. For instance, some of you may be familiar with the ASEAN Infrastructure Fund that we've established together with ASEAN member countries, the ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility that could help coordinate, prepare, and finance the grid. And we have a long-standing focus on regional cooperation. It's in our DNA. We are the secretariat of the Greater Mekong sub-regional economic cooperation program, and others. So building on all this, we are now gearing up in the Asian Development Bank to substantially increase our lending resources. In ASEAN, we are in particular for domestic and regional power grid projects. And as a first step towards such increased financial assistance, we are putting together tailored technical assistance that will help conduct feasibility studies for priority interconnects that will help enhance the regional power market arrangements and establish financing mechanisms in close cooperation with other development partners. Last point, advancing the ASEAN power grid, the vision that not only requires political will, which is obvious, but importantly, it really urgently requires concerted action from many stakeholders, including government agencies, multilateral institutions, private sector, and civil society. So towards this end, very, very pleased to have an excellent lineup of eminent speakers and panelists with us today. And I look forward to the insights and ideas to be shared by you, interactive discussion with all of you, and really a discussion on the opportunities and the benefits that the proposed grid promises to the region. A discussion also on some of the challenges that need to be overcome along the way, and a discussion on the role that each of the key stakeholders, each of us, each of you, each of us, can and should play to turn the vision of the ASEAN Power Group into reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vinny. I think it's really great to show ADB's strong interest, excitement, and then also support I would like to give to ASEAN Power Grid development. And then also he really gives a very good overview of this session itself. So without further ado, also like to introduce our next speaker who will deliver the keynote speech titled "The Powering ASEAN's Green Future, the Pathway Toward the Integrated ASEAN Power Grid." It is my great honor and then also privilege to introduce Mr. Deputy Secretary General, Mr. Savinder Singh of the ASEAN Secretariat for ASEAN Economic Community. He has a lot of experiences before he became Secretariat, Deputy Secretary General in Singapore, and then also providing the instruments in establishing Singapore's role in Asia Trading Hub before his role. But now he's taking big leadership in implementing various ASEAN initiatives, including ASEAN Power Grid. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Savinder Singh, Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN.
Very good afternoon, everyone. First of all, let me acknowledge DG Winfred Wicklin for inviting the ASEAN Secretariat. Pleasure to be here, pleasure to be invited to share our thoughts. I also like to acknowledge in this room some very critical, important people, Excellency Victor Jona that's here, also Eugene To, and of course, Steve, pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting us all yesterday at your function. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it's again like a big honor for us, the Secretariat, to be participating in this forum. We again like to thank the Asian Development Bank for bringing all of us together. And I believe it's almost like a critical juncture for us to be doing this. lot of momentum has come in the last short time of 2 years. I think the momentum on helping to develop what I call the decarbonized strategy for ASEAN region, it's become tighter and stronger. I was just sharing with over lunch that the leaders of ASEAN have come together and they have given us an ultimatum that we need to get the ASEAN power grid up, not in like a floating time period, but they have given us a specific time frame, 2045, the full grid in full force in our region in a period of 20 years. And all of us in this room, we know how infrastructure projects time it takes. So basically, we have no more time left. We need to move a lot quicker. So thank ADB for seeing the urgency and bringing us all together. And I think there'll be more such frequent conversations in the coming year. Quick update quickly before I jump into the essence of what we're going to speak on the APG on ASEAN. As you all know, we are today the 5th largest economy in the world. GDP today stands around 3.6 trillion for 670 million people. And I think we also know that we play a very central role, a proactive role in regional cooperation with external partners in a regional framework that we push very well in the world, which is open, transparent, and inclusive. I think we are one of the few regions in the world who still believe in open trade and still negotiating with all of our large trading partners, upgrading our economic agreements, including we have led the ASEAN-led RCEP agreement, which is in full force and working. And we are already beginning to feel the work of RCEP in our economies. ASEAN's combined economy this year is expected to grow 4.6% despite all the challenges. This is going to outpace the global average, which is sitting around 3.1%. And clearly, this is being fueled by energy demand, which is projected to triple by 2050. I think this is something all of us need to internalize. Our problems in ASEAN are quite different from many regions in the world. I think unlike the developed world, where you see aging societies and general demand for energy is stagnant, this region will need 3x of what we have today by 2050. Again, 2050 is not far away, and to build 3x is a huge challenge for the region. And this is in a situation where 12% of our people actually still don't have access to regular power. So it is a huge challenge on us. And clearly, we all know that energy is crucial to our growth and development. It's going to fuel all that industrialization, and it's going to empower our businesses and of course, improve the quality of our citizens. So as we navigate the complexities of coming years, we definitely need to have a robust and sustainable energy infrastructure plan, which is essential for the growth and development of the region. And for us, I think resiliency for energy demand in the region also means that besides pushing and putting all our efforts in doing our best in growing renewables, we still need to also look at our existing fossil supplied energy sources and make sure we can also equally spend our efforts to decarbonize, capture the emissions, move stronger into carbon capture, carbon reutilization practices in the region, because otherwise, if we don't have like a holistic strategy to do this, we are not going to be able to meet the needs of 3x by 2050. So whenever we sit down with some of our friends and partners from all over the world, we always keep reminding them, it's not so simple. Shut down all your coal plants and you'll be fine, move to renewables and all your problems in the world will be solved. It's not that easy for ASEAN. A lot of our infrastructure in this region is very young, less than 10 years. Billions and billions of dollars has been invested in them, right? Big loans have been taken by member governments to build those utilities. You don't shut them down overnight. What we really need to do is really work towards minimizing the carbon footprint of those assets and make them work for us when we need them, and at the same time, push very strongly towards renewables to meet our energy needs. But at the same time, as part of the carbon neutral plan, we also know we need to be practical. We need to look at solutions that are going to be financially doable for the region and solutions which are practical. And that strategy under the ASEAN Carbon Neutral Plan, one of the biggest energy initiatives that are standing out for us to deliver is, of course, the APG project, the ASEAN Power Grid. By the way, just to make everybody know, this is not a green grid. Our grid is basically the existing grid, which basically is mainly fueled by fossils. Okay, but the whole idea of the decarbonization, the green comes is when the demand and supply is coordinated. All right, where there is oversupply in one country and there's a high demand in another country, we are able to share that, and that will bring down the need for the entire region in terms of spending more money in energy projects, and we can actually have a lower carbon footprint in terms of not generating any more when we don't need to. We can either share the capacities that's in the region. So this is just to ensure that all of you understand what the APG is. It's basically a connection of the grid of the 10 member states. And as we know, this is going to be a critical aspect of our ASEAN carbon neutral strategy, which was again endorsed by our leaders last year. And just to give you a bit of a background, APG is not new. It's been around since 1997. And this was been led by the preparation towards the first ASEAN Interconnection Master Plan study. It's almost now 2 decades now. And since 2003, 3 master plans have evolved the priority infrastructure for an interconnected APG. And the plan, it basically prioritizes building connections between countries and then moving on to sub-regions. And then ultimately, the part 3 part is basically aiming for a unified Southeast Asian power grid. Now, this APG initiative is currently working on 3 streams. The first stream is establishing of the strong institutions for collaborations and coordination among the 10 member states. The second stream is basically looking to investing in and expanding into regional energy infrastructure. And the third stream is on enabling a market for cross-border electricity trading. So I just want to give you a concept of this is quite a huge undertaking with many facets to what APG is all about. So it's not just about physical infrastructure. The existing APG memorandum, the MOU, has been basically now been extended to 2025 because actually we've come to the time, the MOU has actually ended and we have actually bought more time till 2025, which is going to allow our ASEAN member states the ability to develop a new APG agreement framework, which we intend to be able to provide some of the general principles of what the framework will look like. And this is going to happen sometime this year. This is an economic priority deliverable of Laos. And the 10 member states have all agreed to work towards the ability for us to come up with the principles of what this APG framework can look like, the agreement, APG agreement framework. And we will have it out during the ASEAN Energy Ministers meetings in September. Now, the APG current cross-border transmission capacity that we have studied is standing at around 7.7 gigawatts, and with the future capacity expected to grow anywhere between 25 to 112 gigawatts. While some of the interconnections require upgrades, 9 of the 18 priority APG interconnectors are actually already operational. The remaining 9, unfortunately, are still in feasibility study stage. Now, the current power trade with ASEAN, as you can already know, is mostly bilateral, except for we have one multilateral Lao PDR, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore power interconnection project. I think all of us are familiar with that. So clearly, 18 connector projects been identified and still a lot of work to be done, a lot of heavy lifting to be done. The first multilateral power trading began way back in 2018, and that's with the Pathfinder project, Lao PDR, Thailand, Malaysia Power Interconnection Project, which then Singapore joined in 2021 to focus on transferring roughly around 100 megawatt of renewable energy from Lao PDR to Thailand, Malaysia. Then we are also right now in discussion with the Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines Power Interconnection Project, which was announced last year. In fact, it's building on the interconnection which was commissioned in 2016 by Sarawak Energy Berhad, linking Mambong in Sarawak to Bengkayang in West Kalimantan. But the full feasibility studies for the other BIM interconnections have all yet to begin. So ladies and gentlemen, to establish a true multilateral power trade system, we also know that ASEAN must address several technical as well as policy and institutional challenges, including, number one, some harmonization of systems on grid codes, on developing wheeling charge methodologies. We also need to look at how we can ensure third-party access that's open and neutral, and also creating effective transaction settlement mechanisms, and as well as building necessary infrastructure. Very important, the last one. So strong coordination amongst the ASEAN policymakers, the energy regulators and power utilities, as you know, is going to be very critical. For policymakers, we must align strategies and frameworks to support a cohesive regional energy policy towards promoting cross-border electricity trade, as well as ensuring that we can encourage the incoming investments that we need from the private sector, not just from multilaterals, and also at the same time integrating renewable energy sources down the road. From the regulators, the energy regulators, it's essential that we all come together in the region to harmonize technical standards wherever we can, as far as possible, also ensuring regulatory compliance and maintaining grid stability. I think here, the essence of the spirit is interoperability. We need to create mechanisms that will allow interoperability and acceptance in the process. And finally, of course, the third critical group, which is the power utilities in our region, in the 10 countries, we must have them committed. They must be able to implement the necessary infrastructure. They must also be able to manage the grid operations, as well as innovate to incorporate some of the advanced technologies out there, including some of the renewable energy solutions that will help them achieve the desired goal. Now, building the ASEAN power grid infrastructure, we all know is going to require extensive investments. It's estimated, it's roughly is going to be around 764 billion for power generation and transmission systems. That's the cost that we need from now till 2040. And the regional APG interconnectors alone are going to need at least 17 billion US dollars. And additional resources of about US 90 million is needed for feasibility studies for the interconnectors. Now, the overall, we are very clear is that you cannot just focus on the interconnectors. You also need to do all the work on the ground in each of the ASEAN member states to improve their domestic infrastructures also for the interconnectors to work. So that the interoperability can happen and without any disruption to their domestic needs. So to overcome all of these challenges, we clearly know that we need a dedicated financing mechanism, which is going to be critical. And it has to be responsive to the challenges faced by the ASEAN member states in order to help them to establish the project feasibility and also help them to achieve financial closure. The international financial institutions and multilateral development banks like ADB clearly could establish a financing facility or a window that could cater to the challenges faced by the cross-border regional APG projects, and likewise leveraging their knowledge, their expertise, their contacts, their credibilities and resources to help us attract private capital and also provide us with the tools and the coverage for de-risking mechanisms. You see, there's a tall order we are putting on the table for you, DG, but that's the reality. I think we have nowhere else to look but to the multilaterals to help us to coordinate that. We all know that building integrated grids and functioning multilateral power trade, that part, of course, takes time. And this is the experience everywhere. It don't just happen overnight. But while significant progress has been made, the magnitude of the ASEAN power grid, it requires a much more aggressive push. And this is where ASEAN Secretariat, we are leveraging our coordinating role to see whatever we can do in order to secure financing and as well as to maintain that coordination at the regional level that is required. Now, among the challenges in realizing the APG interconnectors is that most of the regional cross-border infrastructure are harder to orchestrate and therefore harder to prioritize domestically. This is quite obvious and natural, right? So most of the time when member states are out there borrowing for their energy needs, the projects domestically get prioritized. Not that the interconnectors are not important to them. They are critical to them. They recognize it. But in terms of prioritization, unfortunately, the interconnector projects are not taking precedence. you know. And therefore, what we have seen is individual project risk, as well as uncertain revenue flows that they see from these connector projects, as well as the lack of project preparation facilities and dedicated or some responsive financial facilities unavailability, and also their inability to really feel fully confident that there's going to be a clear benefit distribution to the individual ASEAN member states. I think these are some of the challenges on the ground that are kind of also holding us back. And but I think this is where we at the same time believe that this is avoidable. I mean, we are not the only region in the world looking at interconnecting power grids across national boundaries. Come on, we are not the first and last. So many of global South economies have done it. And I think there are some solid examples that ADB can show you, all of us, that's happening in South Asia, Bangladesh, India. Incredible projects where rate of returns I've seen where they were projected to be 10, 13 years, but Bangladesh was able to get returns in 2 years, right? So I think our member states need to go and study that and see that and be energized, but what kind of perspectives are there for them to be able to move forward and move ahead in pushing ahead and prioritizing the connector initiatives. Now, clearly the support and the collaboration of financing institutions, as well as our dialogue partner countries and many of the international organizations is going to be paramount. Now, the expertise, the resources, the commitment can all significantly bolster the development of APG and also help us facilitate the necessary investments that we require. Now, financing institutions, I just want to touch this, are going to play a critical role by supporting the development and modernization of the grid infrastructures across ASEAN member states. Now, investment in APG, as I've said and described, are going to yield substantial returns through our enhanced regional energy trade. And financing support will be clearly instrumental in overcoming the initial high costs and risk associated with the APG projects. Therefore, we strongly believe that partnerships with the ASEAN Infrastructure Fund, as well as the ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility, as well as ADB's advisory roles in sub-regional cooperation programs, such as the Greater Mekong Sub-Region, the Bing Miaga, as well as the IMGT, all of these are going to be potential avenues also to help us support and realize the APG. We are at this stage currently exploring with ADB in order to have them play a larger role, potentially even increase their lending resources to ASEAN member states over the next decade, including coming in much stronger in terms of providing greater amount of technical assistance for the general energy transition and also for technical assistance that we require to implement APG. So meanwhile, what I want to say is that we definitely would like to work with ADB on this, but not just ADB, but other multilaterals also, whether it's going to be World Bank or others, in order to make and materialize what we need. So what I want to urge is that for all stakeholders, there's a lot at stake today. I think our mandate to drive the adoption of APG is there. And like I said, today the time is for action. And I think action, creative solutions, empowerment, both financial and technical expertise needs to come in and push. And therefore, the conversations that are going to happen today here are going to be critical. I think it's going to give us the opportunity to hear from experts and also to hear what the challenges lie ahead for us. Thank you with that. Thank you for having Secretariat here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Secretary General, Mr. Savinda, for your very insightful speech. And I think the last words and the time for action for all of us, all stakeholders, including ADB, was really the theme of ASEF and the theme of this session. We are very glad to take all the challenges and the suggestions. And then also, I think our DG is here, and I think he will respond all together with ADB team. He mentioned about also the importance of moving from the plan to project and also need for the financing support. And this is the area that I think we have to get out of the energy sector in terms of discussions. And we have placed a very special also presentation from our economic research department who actually look into the economic impact, the macroeconomic impact of the APG. So it's not only the technical, the benefits, but actually there will be the much larger the macroeconomic impacts that is going to be proved by the project. So I'd like to invite our colleague from the research department. So he's Mr. James Villafrete, regional lead economist, and he'll share his initial result of this macroeconomic study for the APG. Thank you.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests and delegates of the Clean Energy Forum. So happy to be here. This is my first time to present in ASEP, so I'm excited. So what I'm gonna present today is actually a study on estimating economic benefit of the ASEAN power grid, which we started about a month ago. So this is really very preliminary. So why do we need an ASEAN power grid? I think the SG Satvendra already said ASEAN is the third largest economy in Asia, the fifth in the world, population of about 680 million, average growth of about 5%, energy to triple in 30 years to 2050. And that's a big amount of energy. We know that per capita income is directly correlated with energy. So if you want to be richer before we get older, definitely we need more energy. And because of the ETM, which my DG mentioned, right, we are retiring coal power plant. The challenge for providing this energy is larger. The second part of the reason is actually ASEAN is quite reliant on imported oil and natural gas, which are quite carbon intensive. So they are quite dirty. And if you look at the GHG emission, the share of the energy sector is quite large. And then because of the rising conflict, price of oil and natural gas has been rising. And then the third reason, which is more important, is our large net zero and sustainability commitment. Presently, we are quite behind in terms of our emission target, about 40 metric tons of CO2, which means that we need to reduce our emissions by about 11% at present. So this is why we need the ASEAN power grid. It can provide the tool to raise enough energy to provide cleaner energy and tap the large renewable potential of the region. Presently, we're only tapping 3% of it. So 97% is actually untapped. Now, what are the benefits that ASEAN Power Grid could give to the region? The first very clear benefit is the large economic benefits. So ASEAN Power Grid basically creates a larger market. It allows better resource allocation because now you can utilize the more endowed regions to provide energy to the regions which have less endowment but requires a lot of energy. We know that the northern region of ASEAN actually generates more renewable energy, and then the southern region actually has a larger energy demand. The second is it can increase competition. And when you increase competition, definitely you expand the trading of energy, which lowers electricity prices. And I will show you later how much can we reduce our electricity cost. In terms of environmental benefits, it is very clear. The ASEAN Power Grid basically maximizes the utilization of renewable energy, which are quite cheap. So when you compare the cost of renewable energy to the cheapest fossil-fired plant, they are probably about 30%. So there's a large cost savings when you open up the energy market, when you connect them and you tap on the energy. The grid also optimizes the utilization of the energy mix because now you're actually choosing from a lot of plants with different cost and technology across the entire region. The third benefit of the APG is also, it is one of the pillars of regional integration. Why? Because it will actually increase the economic interdependence of countries within the region. It can even be a risk mitigating in terms of conflict, because when we build a regional grid, the mutually shared interest of all the countries grow. So this is very important in terms of building the ASEAN economic community. And in terms of regional energy security, what you can see is that when you diversify the supply from imported fuel and natural gas to RE, then you also smoothen the supply variations. You minimize the need to invest in emergency plans by country, because then you can actually draw from other supplies somewhere else. So now let me go back to our study. I think the value addition of our study are twofold. First, our study looks at the economy-wide impact of the grid. Most of the studies that I've seen actually uses production and trade models, so they just calculate the direct impact. We are using a global model that has been used for energy, economic, and climate policy simulation. So this is quite a global workhorse. This is the GTAP model. The second difference of our study is we approach the ASEAN Power Grid study from the point of view of decarbonization strategy of the region. So we put as the primary objective is how can it actually contribute to reduce our GHG emission. So I will not bore you with the models. So basically we merged two models. So we are using a hybrid model. Within a month, we created a hybrid model. So we have an electricity model, which has actually modeled the carbon emission of electricity plants. And then we have a power model, which actually allows substitution of different technology power plants, different cost power plants, and integrated transmission and generation. Now, our study is basically scenario analysis. So basically, we created 4 scenarios. The first scenario is the region without an ASEAN power grid. So for this scenario, we used the socioeconomic shared pathways, which was done by IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. We chose the second SSP, which is the middle ground. So in the middle ground, the global scenario up to 2100 basically almost repeats what we historically see. So there's not much change in policy. There's a bit of improvement in technology and energy, and some socioeconomic targets are delivered, but the performance are quite varied. Some countries are doing better, others are not. So that's our baseline without a power grid. Then the second scenario, what we did was to build the ASEAN power grid through expanding the transmission lines, the 18 interconnection points that DSG mentioned, worth 17 billion. So what we did was we allowed increased capacity to transmit energy across those countries, right? And what we assumed when we did that is that the increased transmission capacity contributes to increased trade in energy, right? Then the third scenarios, aside from the APG, what we did was we assumed that there'll be greater investment in renewable energy, the variable renewable energy, wind and solar. We used the optimum scenario, the middle scenario in the ASEAN Master Plan. Then the fourth scenario, which is interesting, is aside from the ASEAN power grid, we introduce a carbon tax, which basically penalizes the production and trading of expensive energy. So let's get to the result. So what I have here are actually 5 types of result. The first result, these are all expressed as deviation from the baseline, and these are deviation from the baseline in 2040. So we did a 16-year simulation from 2024 up to 2040. So in 2040, scenario 2, if you build an APG, GDP and employment will roughly be around 10% higher. If you build on top, if you add investment in renewable energy, it will be 12% higher. And if you add a carbon tax, it will be 15% higher. So you can see the result. The one that I'll mention is the GHG emission. What you can see is that the GHG emission really increases a lot when you, aside from the APG, you invest more in renewable energy and you incorporate a carbon tax. So I won't go through the individual results. So what does this mean to us? So I think there are 3 sets of messages here. The first set of messages, it's really clear that the economic and environmental benefits of APG is quite large. And this is coming from 3 effects. One is the greater utilization of clean and cheaper source of energy which are renewable. The second is we actually draw from the great trade effect of the grid. So when you actually open the market to energy trading, you can actually choose cleaner and cheaper plants outside of your national sovereign, outside of the national country, which makes it more important. The third effect is actually the allocative efficiency effect. And this is quite important when during the simulation of the carbon tax. What we usually, when we incorporate carbon tax in CGE modeling, we take a hit on GDP because it increases the cost of energy, renewable extractive sectors go down. But in this case, what you can see is that when we incorporated the carbon tax, GDP in 2040 is still 15% higher. When we inquired where that is coming from, it's coming from a allocative efficiency effect. The second result is that these estimated benefits are still indicative. We have made simplifying assumptions, which we believe some of these benefits could be overestimated. Like as I said, we did not account, for example, for the cost of investing in the grid. We did not account for the difficulty of harmonizing the policy, harmonizing the politics. So let me end here, and I end with one thought. This experiment showed me that energy connectivity or investing in the grid is actually as important as clean energy for our decarbonization strategy. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, James. I think this is very powerful message, and I think one of the big benefits out of this exercise is really James is very convinced with this APG and be part of our team and to really convince the other stakeholders, such as the Minister of Finance, who will then decide on the financing matter in the future. So we have actually a very interesting panelists to have a panel discussion after this presentation who really have been involved in the APG, either bilaterally or the multilaterally, and who have experience in terms of the challenges, but also the kind of opportunities ahead. So I'd like to invite those panelists, but actually we also had a presentation that I prepared. I give 1 minute, very quick snapshot what we have organized before we open a panel discussion. So all about this unlocking the APG potential. We all know about the benefits and challenges and how we can act together to unlock this potential. And this is basically a summary of what actually DSG Singh mentioned. I just don't need to repeat every detail, but the key message is now it's different from the past. Now we have the mandate to achieve this carbon neutrality, also the energy transition. That requires much stronger grid and interconnections to really include all the renewable resources in the region. Now we have a political commitment, as DSG mentioned, so we have a good ground to move forward. This is also kind of approaches that also DSG mentioned about. It's not only the physical infrastructure, but it's actually a combination of the various architectures that support the physical infrastructure and the flow of the power. And ADB is ready to work with other stakeholders and then also as ASEAN member states to provide the various products and services to meet this demand and to tackle these challenges together. So I'll end my presentation, and this presentation is available anyway at the cloud and website, so please take a look. And then we'll now move to the panel discussion that include the 5 distinguished panelists, and then also the moderation. And moderation is going to be done by Mr. Keiju Mitsuhashi, our director for the Southeast Asia and Pacific team of the energy sector. So Keiju, please.
Good afternoon. This is an exciting event, and then I expected less people, joining here, but then we don't even have enough seats. So Apologies for the people, standing behind, but then this is an exciting, panelists, gathered here today. I will call one by one, and if you can sit, when I call, please come over here and then sit from this end, please. The first is His Excellency Victor Jonna, Undersecretary of State Ministry of Mines and Energy from Kingdom of Cambodia. Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Eugene To, Assistant Chief Executive of Energy Markets Authority, Singapore. Third, Dr. Titipon, from the Chief of the Power System Connection and the Incorporation Planning Department of IGAT, Thailand. Fourth panelist, Dr. Steve Olive, Mission Director of USAID's Regional Development Mission for Asia from USAID. Thank you. And then last but not least, Ms. Jaime Grace de la Cruz, Vice President ASEAN, Philippines. So as you can see, we have the ministry representative from who looks at the policy and regulations. We got a regulator representing the panel. We got a utility representation, and then USAID for the development partner side, and the private sector, representative from ASEAN here. If you allow me, I will sit here and then moderate together with the panelists. So for the APG, we have had the keynotes speak, and then a bit of the scene setting on the economics and the technical aspects of APG. It's important before we talk about only the ambition and then the dream, we got to look at the reality and the issues and challenges we have. And we, ADB, try to become a more solution-oriented organization. First things we need to do is to look at the reality check, and then look at the challenges that we face, in front of us. So, if I may, Excellency Jonna, I'd like to talk throw a few questions, and then one of the first questions I want to ask is, despite the shared vision and aspiration for the regional power trade in ASEAN in the last decades, it represents a very small fraction of total energy consumption in ASEAN. What have been the main obstacle, do you think, and what role do you think the governments in championing the agenda?
Thank you very much. Before I starting, I would like to thank you, ADB, USAID, and other development partners to organize this ASEF with the sideline of this. It is very important that bring all of us to sit together and exchange view. With the question, we would like to inform that the ASEAN Power Grid have been thinking long time ago, over the decades, few decades, and we could not get reach. The existing just only we starting with bilateral cooperation with country to country, but the multilateral power exchange just starting in 2020 to 2022, LTMS, Laos, Thai, Malaysia, Singapore. I think the problem that we could not reach is we lacking of high political involvement for that. And we think the high political involvement is very important, that bring all of us together and to reach the target. As everybody know that all globally we are in the pathway for energy transition to combat with the climate change. For this, the idea of linking together is very important so that we can bring more green power so that we can share in the region, and that is the direct combat with climate change. I thank you so much.
Thank you, Excellency Jonna. So leadership issue is very important. It's the start to bring people and the utility, all the stakeholders together. So I hope the leadership on this ASEAN will continue to be strong and then trickle down to the every stakeholders in the community. One of the things I also would like to ask Mr. John is on the area that we should be looking at in terms of the specific policy and the initiatives in implementing to support the development of APG within the energy strategy. Cambodia has been quite active in this. And then what do you think, how important the sequence of all the support, policies and initiatives needed to bring in, the private sector, public sector, actors to be active in this field?
Yes. Thank you very much. Of course, the policy of the government is so important. The government has put a target that we need to do a collaboration among all stakeholders and international cooperation so that the policy is that we combine together, funding together, gathering together in order to achieve the target. Our target is sharing the green energy and supply powers to improve the economic. And of course, as I stated before, is we need to do the energy transition and for the net zero carbon emission. I thank you.
Yeah, target setting and then putting the framework. I think that's the very important role to bring everyone together. So this is another important, reinforcing point on the role of the government. Mr. Eugene, if I may ask a more question there. Singapore is actively promoting clean energy trade, shown by its clean goal to import 4 gigawatts of clean energy. Could you explain how Singapore plans to benefit from and to contribute to the development of ASEAN Power Grid?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, congratulations to the organizer ADB for a very successful conference. Very good turnout today. Let me start off with a story. I once listened to my Land Transport Authority colleagues in Singapore. So the Land Transport Authority oversees the transport system in Singapore. And they wanted to introduce internet in train stations for commuters so that they could enjoy the internet while waiting for the trains. And if you were to think about how will you place your Wi-Fi routers if you're in that situations, and you're an engineer like me, the answer was quite simple. You just put the Wi-Fi routers more or less equally spaced out, right? So that you have equal coverage. But they also had another problem, which was the overcrowding in the middle of the platform. And they wanted people to move to the sides, right? And so they came up with this very clever solution where they put the Wi-Fi routers weighted towards both ends. So that when people realize that, oh, the Wi-Fi coverage gets stronger towards the ends, they naturally walk towards the end. I thought it's a very clever solution because it solved 2 problems in one shot with very, very, very low incremental cost. But the point I'm trying to make here is that the regulators have different toolkits or different tools in our toolkit. And knowing which one to use at the right time is really important. We want to use tomorrow's solutions to deal with tomorrow's problems. And I think here we are dealing with a solution or a problem that looks to 2050. And Singapore has announced our ambitions. And I think really at the global level or even at the regional level, there are 3 different frameworks or 3 different steps that we need to all look at together. One is at the individual countries level. We all have different targets to meet. Many countries are committed to a decarbonization program. Singapore is no exception. We are looking to a net zero economy by 2050, and we are putting policies to do that. The second level is at the bilateral level between 2 countries. And sometimes it's easier because both countries are willing to trade or buy or sell, right? And it's just working out the terms and conditions. And I think really, really what we want to do at the APG level is to form a multilateral framework which allows the flow of energy across all the countries within this region. And I think to get there really requires a change in the mindset among the regulators and government agencies, but also the private sector, how we move from one level to the other, and to be able to deploy different mechanisms to get to where we want.
Thank you, Eugene. So before we move to Dr. Titipon, one of the things that which is emerging and getting more important and in discussion is the subsea cable connection. And then I understand that EMA has granted conditional approval to a project in the Mekong region for which the subsea cable will likely to be needed to connect to Singapore. How does EMA believe this cable could be best developed? There are a lot of challenges and then measures need to be done. For example, if it is to be developed as part of the infrastructure shared and usable by multiple countries under the APG, how do you see the role of Singapore?
Take one step back. Singapore has committed to a 2050 net zero target, and there are 4 strategies, one of which is connecting our grids with our region so that we can access or we can trade clean energy. The other 3 is to maximize our solar potential within Singapore, to continue to use natural gas as a transition fuel. And the last one is to study low carbon alternatives like hydrogen going into the future. We have given conditional approvals for 4 gigawatts last year, 1 gigawatt to Cambodia, 1 gigawatt to Vietnam, and 2 gigawatts to Indonesia. And for many of these, or at least for the Cambodia and the Vietnam one, clearly requires subsea cables, right? And the challenge there is how can we work together within the framework of the APG, possibly, or multilateral framework, which allows the flow of electrons, right, through transit countries that will have to give permission for the laying of these cables. And I thought here is the point where an honest broker or trusted party, whether it's the SecGen or Secretariat in ASEAN, or a multilateral like ADB, could come in to facilitate a discussion around a template where we can all lower the cost of barriers for negotiations. Today requires a lot of effort, both sides. Every time we have a new power deal, we start from scratch and we try to put everything together, and it takes a long time. Whether we can work towards a template or a framework where we all agree there are certain principles to abide by, but we know that there will be some context specific to the deals and the needs of the countries, and then we adjust accordingly. I think that would be a win-win solution for all.
Yeah, Mr. Eugene, thank you very much. So for multi-country or multi-stakeholder interconnectivities requires everyone's collaboration in it, and then hopefully that there's a role that ADB can play in facilitating and moving forward these exciting the initiatives. Now, Dr. Titipon, you're representing the utility side, and then with the LTMS, which has initiated launched last year of 100 megawatt capacity. You've been through a bit of experience. If you can share with us your experience on this GMS and the LTMS, and then any lessons and recommendations that you can share with us. Please, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Yeah, I'm from utilities, so I'm going to share with you the views from the utility side. When we first having the assignment to go for the multilateral power trade, one thing you need to know that when you're going to do the power tradings among the countries, you need to have the infrastructure ready. If not ready, it must be nearly ready, or it's already there, one or another. So the infrastructure, in my sense, it could be both, either the hard infrastructure, like the transmission line, the interconnector itself, the substation, the generators, because of you need to have the generators, and the connecting point to the load demand itself. Talking about the The other kind of infrastructure, it is the soft infrastructure. Do we have the market mechanism available? What about the power purchase agreements? If we're going to go for the tradings from one country like Laos PDR, wheeling through Thailand, Malaysia to Singapore, do we have the wheeling agreement available? That's the things maybe we need to think over. So that's why at the beginning when we start the LTMS, you can see that it took us nearly 2 years to get this ready. All of the enabling framework and agreements, not only talking about the infrastructure itself. So with that, when we moving up that to make the quick win one project, the initiative, the pathfinders, to make sure and to run the concept of the multilateral power trade, make sure that can happen in our region, in ASEAN. You need to have the infrastructure. If you come up with the new infrastructure, it's going to take you at least 5 to 7 years to get the interconnection available. So we decide to use the existing infrastructure instead. So the generators, you must realize that each nation, they have their own demand and they already have their own generation. So with that, how we can take the power? So the power supposed to be for this trading, it is the access power. So the access power from Lao PDR is already there. We use the grid-to-grid interconnection to avoid any third party. The third party I'm talking about is we avoid the other party to be the player in here to test the concept first. Here you can see that it's all are the utilities or the entity under the government agencies. From the Lao PDR, we use EDL. From Thailand, we take EGAT as the focal point. From Malaysia, TNB, and down south to Singapore, EMA. So all under the government. So it is much easier to have the MOU among the government to test this. It takes time. So we run through the projects. I'm going to jump over to the LTMS right away. We start with the June 21st, 21. I'm sorry. Yeah. So because we run it for 1 year something. With that, there's the flow. The flow's coming. See now, that's the lesson learned too. Not only the readiness of the infrastructure. You may think that it's already ready, but along the way, there's the operational constraint happen along the way. The generation, the one that we have, it is the non-firm generation. It is the hydro power plant. I just mention from Lao PDI. I hope it's okay for you to refer. Yeah, and it is the runoff river. If you have a look at the data, the record, you can see that nearly last year, the whole year, we don't have any trading. The reason is because of we run out of the power. It is the dry year for Lao PDR. They cannot provide to supply the power. So this might be the other risk to stop the trading coming out there. So because of we have only one sources. Yeah. The other thing is about the hard interconnection. Talking about the transmission itself. It is quite old because of we using the existing infrastructure. Talking about the capability along the way from interconnection between Thailand and Lao PDR, we use the existing infrastructure. It is the grid-to-grid. Under only the lower level, 115 kV. The maximum capacity is only 1,000 megawatt. However, there's the system constraint. The constraint between two countries because of when you synchronize between two countries, this is only two countries first, they might have some oscillation happen. If during the rainy season, for example, you inject a lot of power while the other part of the system in Thailand might not be able to do. The synchronize between two is something you need to take a look closer if we are going to advancing for the new paradigms of the multilateral power trade in the region in reality. Because of this is the test bed. One thing you need to ensure. The other thing is the aging. So you need to put investment on now because of you need to upgrade your infrastructure. The infrastructure that you have might not be able to, or if not, you need to give the owners of the infrastructure the incentive so they can have some income to upgrade their own and ensure that the tariff mechanism and the trading mechanism is kind of reflecting the reality so they can get some kind of the fair treatment in terms of the tariff. Either the wheeling charges or the energy tariff in return. It is because of lesson learned is that nowadays we know that our customer, they don't need only the electricity when they open up or turn on the switch. Power not only like that, they need the green electricity because of they use it for the other manner as well. So with that, you are now creating more value. Actually, if it is the positive mindset kind of with running over this industry, we are adding more value, adding more attribute on the power that, but you need to pay the price. The price is about all of the whole market mechanism, the trading mechanism, all of the enabling framework, and other thing. Maybe we need to put on the table and discuss before we going to go for the further step to advance the real market power and multilateral power trading in the region to happen in real. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tizipon. So you can see, I think the infrastructure needs is there. We got to have a lot of a framework discussion before we enter into actual trading, and during the operation, there's another challenge is that the utility faces in making sure our system operates better and then reliable. And it's good to know that we are adding color to electrons, and then hopefully the consumers value this. Next, if I may, I would like to move to Dr. Steve Olive from the USAID. They have been working on the regional connectivity for a very long time. And so we'll be grateful if you could provide us with the overview of how the US government have been supporting the development of the APG, including the major lessons learned and recommendation in improving the assistance and coordination among development partners.
Great, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to all of our distinguished colleagues. So I am Steve Olive, the Mission Director for USAID's Regional Development Mission for Asia, that's based in Bangkok, but covers Southeast Asia. And we are very much interested in working on the transboundary challenges and opportunities in this region. So let me first add my voice to the echo in the room, and that we've heard from many of our speakers. Now is the time to invest in the ASEAN power grid. There's no better time to do it. It is complicated. Many partners will have many pieces of developing the grid, but if we don't all start working now in a coordinated fashion and supporting ASEAN, it won't be realized by those very ambitious goals that the Deputy Secretary General laid out. And so I do think it is the time to invest. And so from USAID's perspective, we want to be sure that we are supporting the priorities of our partners in this region. And so that's why we emphasized supporting the ASEAN Center for Energy, or ACE, and their priorities of developing the ASEAN Interconnected Master Plan Study 3, which is, and it's been cited by previous speakers, the foundational study that has identified 18 priority transmission interconnectors needed to actualize the ASEAN power grid. And I hope some of you in the room were able to come to yesterday's session where we talked about the renewable potential in ASEAN and selling to the ASEAN grid. And I want to give a shout out to ACE's representative, Nadiha Shani, who laid out very clearly what some of these priorities are for ASEAN in developing the grid. And of course, Dr. Titiporn, you are also part of that all-female panel that we had yesterday and that did a fantastic job. So we are, our main program that we call Southeast Asia Smart Power Program, or SPP, is implementing the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation. And rather than bring our own projects to the table, we made a strategic decision to invest a large portion of our energy funding into the ASEAN Center for Energy and supporting its priorities. Also, this decision paid off because we've got our U.S. Trade and Development Agency, which is another U.S. government agency, to secure $2 million for the ASEAN Power Grid feasibility studies, again, that the Deputy Secretary General mentioned as critical to laying out the path for investors in the ASEAN power grid. And so we strongly encourage governments, development partners, and the private sector to keep financing new transmission lines and interconnectors and support the ASEAN power grid. But it's also important to note that physical infrastructure is only half the battle, and ASEAN will need new regulatory commercial frameworks or rules of the road to enable this complex undertaking. And Dr. Titiporn, you were saying some of these questions as well, as who will serve as the system operator? How will wheeling charges be calculated? How will various national grids be harmonized? And how will corporate buyers of clean energy be able to track where their electrons are coming from? And so I really appreciated your presentation yesterday of the Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, the LTMS, which has been mentioned by several of the speakers yesterday, in really laying out some of the challenges. And you can count on USAID and the US government to be a partner in addressing many of those challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's very encouraging to have a partner like a USAID working in the ASEAN Power Grid, and then the different development partners have different strengths and weaknesses, and then it's really fortunate for ADB to be joining hands in development of the APG. And then so we look forward to further deepening and then the tangible collaboration together on this. I want to give floor to now to the private sector representative, Jamie, and then if you could share with us, what's the most critical, policy and regulation hurdles in developing, export-oriented renewable energy. It's very important, for all of us to learn the private sector perspective, and then you have done from the ASEAN a lot of investments in the region. And if you could share with us some of the insights that you have on this. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here. To answer your question, I would cite the example of our investment most recently in the Monsoon Wind Project. It's a cross-border project between Laos and Vietnam. I think the challenges or the critical things that we've encountered there are really two things, right? It's really the stability of the revenues to unlock the 600 megawatts financing needed to get the project become real, right? And so the other one is really the transmission line, because the question there is who takes on the risk on building the transmission line to make sure that it happens at the right time when the plant is already built, and then what happens, who operates it later on, and then later on when you have this transmission line up and there's new projects in the picture, how will they now tap into that transmission line and share that transmission line, given that, on our side, for example, the Monsoon Wind was the one who financed or built the Laos side of the transmission line. So you can see in that aspect that these two critical factors are the things that we actually look for, not just on the monsoon wind. We are also looking at other projects that under development in Laos, between Laos and Vietnam as well. I cite that as an example to answer your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Also, a further question on I'd like to add is, as a renewable energy developer, what's your thoughts on the benefit and risk of introducing regional power market for trading residual and surplus power in each country beyond the long-term PPA? Most of them, the way we have been doing to make project bankable is to have a long-term PPA. But would be really interested in looking at, what can we do, further on power market, development. And then if you have any thought on that, that'd be appreciated.
Sorry, I think the benefit of the regional market pool of power is really it unlocks renewable projects for areas that have high renewable potential. We all know that renewable projects actually are location centric or season centric, depends on where the resource is, right? So other aspects or other countries and other areas may not have the same opportunity, right? So having this pool and this APG actually helps unlock that. From our perspective, it also helps us build more renewable projects on areas that have high resource and be able to distribute it or sell it to areas that need the power, right? So for example, in one of our other projects, we are experiencing curtailment, right? Because of grid restrictions, right? Constraints, right? So with having that pool and having APG there, it allows us to it unlocks the project to be able to produce the maximum power it can, right? Not just to address the load requirements within that area, but also outside of that country, right? So that's the benefit we see. What the risk from my perspective would be is actually was mentioned earlier. It's really about the grid stability and security, right? Because if one of the areas, or we're talking about a bigger network of grid, right? So if one area or one country will have issues on grid because of, I don't know, typhoon or whatever would happen, right? How will the grid be maintained? This entire big network be maintained such that the power plants will continue to produce and distribute that power to where it's supposed to go. So I think those are the points that I have from the private sector perspective.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any other thoughts? We still have 10 more minutes. My thought is that maybe we give floor to for questions, and then if you have, please raise your hand, and then before I finish my sentence, we get a hands up. All right. So we'll give we go Q&A if that's okay, and then there are a few the last part, I want to give also a moment for each to reflect, the last comments after that. So if you can bring the microphone to Jeff, yeah. Okay, so at the back, sir, first.
Hello.
That's right. If you can line up over there on.
Hello, good afternoon. This is for infrastructure. Probably can be answered by Dr. T.T. Porn. What will be the transmission frequency and the capacity design of the Asian power grid? Because 10 countries, we have different frequency, we have different transmission voltage. What will be the standard? Thank you.
Perhaps we go one by one. Yeah. Okay, Dr. Titipon, if you can. if you can.
Okay. So yeah, thank you for the question. To answer that, I think in ASEAN countries, we having one frequency, 50 hertz. If I have got it right, yeah, 50 hertz. I'm not quite sure to the southern part or the western, but I think it is 50 hertz. One thing. I'm talking about the voltage differences. Yeah, because of we have using the different standard. Some using European standard, some using American standard. So the voltage level is different. For example, Thailand and Malaysia. Thailand we use 115 kV. Malaysia they use 130 kV. Thailand using 230 kV. Malaysia 270 kV. I'm going to take Malaysia and Thailand as an example. Talking about the interconnection or synchronization among the regions, not the problems. It is okay. The technology nowadays can cope with either the different frequency, fine. But the readiness of the two systems may be the other thing we need to have a look closer. With that, for example, Thailand and Malaysia, we have both. We do the AC interconnection, 132, 115 to 132 kV. We have just transformer, power transformer to step up from 115 to 130. And the transformer should be at one side, not the other side, for example. The synchronized okay. The voltage level is okay. But the amount of the power when you synchronize, it is something we need to do very comprehensive power system study. Not only the feasibility study to get the economical cost benefit ratio done, the return on the investment. So this is the key to avoid any risk on the security sake. People coming up in the old time, they use HVDC interconnection. So if things happen, the synchronize between two systems split off right away, and we can just get back the system into the operation with the RAM rate ratio very quickly. So that's the old time we have done. However, nowadays things change. The technology solutions coming out. There are so many flexible solutions over the AC as well. Fax device and other kind of the equipment that can use to smooth up this thing, it is okay. However, in reality, in practice, not reality, might not be used much for the AC, synchronized at the higher level. We still use the HVDC. With this, I mean, Thailand and Malaysia now, we have done the feasibility study. We come up with the two options as well and evaluate what is the best solution for us. But at the end of the study, it's going to be the cost benefit. Technology is already there. Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope I answer your question.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Joshua from Alatro Partners. My question is on electricity pricing across ASEAN. To illustrate, the Philippines has notably high electricity prices. Can you think of, or are there strategies in your mind on what factors can be put into the pricing model to help make those electricity prices comparable across the region?
Anyone would like to answer this? It's about how to reduce the tariff level and perhaps in the context of making use of this regional connectivity.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess the overall when there's a more access, more capacity available, that may overall reduce the level of power generation for each country. But I think Philippines is more of a right now non-subsidized, subsidized there's a cross subsidies within the, retail prices, but the customers. But then I think this is a little bit different context, but yep. Okay, we got two more, and then after that, we'll go back to the panelists. Yeah.
Hi, thank you, Keju. Peter DuPont from Asia Clean Energy Partners. We saw that I think the primary energy now in ASEAN is about something like 85% fossil fuels. And we're going towards a more decarbonized grid, but something we haven't talked much about at this meeting, except for Monday, there was a session on 24/7 power, is electrify everything. And we really need to electrify so much equipment and industry and cars and everything. And Bill Gates wrote a book about this, about the climate crisis, and Saul Griffith has been pounding about electrify everything. Given that we will need to electrify so many things in order to decarbonize, that is going to make the demand go even higher on the grid. So I'm wondering if that's sort of a forcing event to accelerate the adoption of the ASEAN power grid. And the ASEAN power grid could actually help us electrify everything faster. Just maybe someone would want to comment on that.
Any thought, any things you can reflect?
Peter, let me answer you in Thailand perspective. When we're talking about carbon neutrality, every single country's member in ASEAN is going toward that, not except Thailand. In Thailand, we have carbon neutrality. We're supposed to have RE, new power generation from RE, 50% by 2050. So now, our current status, we have RE in our portfolio, the installed capacity, 1/3. And with our new PDP, the draft one, we're going to reach up this goal by 2037. Yeah, that's our ambitious goal, and we're going to implement it in our PDP. You're going to see this launch out very soon. So with respect to the EV, yes, in our carbon neutrality roadmap, the national, electrification is something that can support the carbon neutrality target. We aim to have EV in using the electrification in transport sector by encourage people or stimulate the use of the EV adoption in the countries, 30% by 30. So right now we have the EV adoption over nearly 200,000. What we are talking about the EV right now, because of, and what is in connection with the ASEAN power grid, it is because of, if you see EV is using battery, the key component. And in Thailand, yeah, we know that sometimes in the past, we thought that we consider EV as the load demand, consume the electricity. You don't forget that most of the time the EV car parking at one place, if it is the passenger car, or if it's moving to the charging station, of course you might not play with this, running with this scheme. This scheme we using the vehicle to grid scheme. We running these projects for some time in Thailand, do the pilot project. With that, we think that perhaps we can treat EV as a generation sources because of EV charging at night time. So they can compensate and support back the system, the grid, in daytime. For example, because of passenger car, mostly they charge at home. So in daytime, or even they charge at their office parking lot. We have some pilot project with some the manufacturer, EV manufacturer, talking about that. So with that, you can defer the investment of the generation by using the battery. So arbitrage some time of the day to cut off the peak or shift the load or the generation to use on the different time of the day. So with that, you can defer the investment over the transmission and the generation as a whole. And in sum, you can support the ASEAN power grid. You can take this power to do trading, perhaps in the future, but it is at the pilot project stage. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dipon. Okay, last question, if we can.
Hello. Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I have a question for the three officials from MME Cambodia, IGAT, and EMA. So I think for the past 2 or 3 years, we've seen a lot of encouraging once-in-a-lifetime developments in terms of the projects and APG initiatives like the LTMS or the Monsoon Project. I want to know what should we expect as a community in the next, let's say, 3 years as the next leap forward for the region. What is on your wish list, for example? What do you think that we can expect most feasibly and most ambitiously in the next 3 years in terms of APG projects and cooperation?
All right, thank you very much. I think each have a wish list or the target that I'd like to look at for the next 3 years. If I may, I will give floor to each one of the panelists to reflect, your thoughts through this session, and then what's the biggest highlights take away from this session. So if we can move from Excellency John, please.
Yeah, we find a very important role of ADB. ADB has involved in supporting the sub-regional, Greater Mekong sub-regional for a long time. I have joined ADB for the GMS energy market since 1994 to now it's 30 years. And of course, there have a lot of study have been done and promote capacity building. And I think ADB could help to increase the capacity to support to ASEAN, especially to APG. As at the moment, ADB is a dialogue partner with ASEAN. So I know that the role of ADB is very important, even that ADB could provide the funding or technical assistance to conduct some study, like a master plan study, to find a feasible project and invest. Thank you so much.
My takeaway is that we need to start small, find the right wins for each country, pull them along, and then we move on. So I know the discussion has been how we can support the electrification of ASEAN. So from Singapore's perspective, when we buy 4 gigawatt, it should not be seen as benefiting Singapore alone. Right? And we are very open when we talk to the countries that we are discussing with. It could be the project, could be scoped in such a way that some of the power goes back to the local producer, local needs or local consumers, which would never have taken place because of bankability issues until somebody like a bigger scale buyer like Singapore comes in. So we are very mindful that when we have this discussion, we must always be on a win-win basis. And it could be a power sharing agreement, and it could then vary depending on the developments of the respective countries. And then I think along the way, the multilateral, we got to find a way where we can find synergistic wins, right? Where the system wins as a whole, if we can all cooperate together, whether you're a transit country for that particular deal, but when the next deal comes up, you could be the one that could be buying or selling, right? And therefore seeing the whole, and therefore enabling some of the respective will be very, very crucial.
Thank you, Eugene. A lot of win-win situation, that's opportunities available, and we should, maximize that. Thank you.
Yeah, to me, when we have a look at the ASEAN power grid and our aims to achieving the multilateral power trade or even the regional power trade, seems like we have a big pictures. And now we try to put up all of the jigsaw to make the beautiful pictures come in. Right now we are in the beginnings, of course. And when you ask me like 3 years from now, what we're going to see, we see some progress. Yeah, it's from time to time. For example, right now, talking about the multilateral power trade, we already done. But what we have done, let me tell you, only one line platform, trading platform, one single buyer, one single seller and buyer, and two wheelers. It is not reflect the reality when you do the power trading. So now that's why for the LTMS phase 2, we change the scheme. We're going to go for multilateral, multi-directional on top of the multilateral, meaning that you should have more than one buyer or seller in there and more than one direction, not only one way flow. Any way can flow. And we're going to test this trading scheme in the same different platform. One thing can happen right away. And the terms of the LTMS phase 2 supposed to commencement by this June, because of the June's going to be expired LTMS phase 1. So we're going to have 2-year term, so you can see some fruitful and beautiful result after that. The other thing that in the GMS region that we are talking with the JUMPS framework, Japan, US, we have some cooperation framework, and also we talk with the ADP, maybe they can add up on top. We think that maybe not only the trading platform, one way, because of ASEAN is 10 countries, not only 4 member countries. We should just put the different pictures to make it bigger and more beautiful. So now we create new trading platform. We're going to the Lower Mekong area, Laos, Thai, Cambodia, for example. So with this trading platform, we try to attribute something different. Not only we trading over something missing in the first LTMS, we prioritize the LTMS first. No matter the power flow it is, we leave the flow to the Singapore as the priority. It's not reflect the reality. In the neighboring country between two, they may need to use that interconnector. So how we're going to come up with the evaluation of the online available transfer capability of each interconnection to ensure that you're going to utilize at most each interconnector. And maybe when you put this on the market, you post it on the screen. You say that, okay, each interconnector right now, there's the availability happen and the rooms for the all trader to come and use. So this is something that may be useful for the future. So this is the LTC trading platform. On top of it, we've been thinking with the GMS, the Lower Mekong members, of course, in the regions of the GMS, that perhaps it is the time. Remember, I'm talking about right now our customer that demand not only the power, they demand the green power. So we think that maybe the energy attribute, it is the time to implement and join. We are going to go for the cross-border REC trading as well. Because of we never have it in the past, but we think that it is the challenging, and we're seeking for the support from the government, from ACE, from, of course, ASEC, from ASEAN Secretary, and from all banker investor to maybe make sure that in our regions can do just exactly the same in the European country, to have some cross-border trading, because of we are one grid. Actually, if we can interconnect to each other and one community, so why not we can have one joy? Thank you.
Thank you. Very, very exciting final remark. Thank you. Yeah. Dr. C.
My takeaway from today and really all week is that renewable energy projects in Southeast Asia and the ASEAN power grid can indeed grow together and will grow together. And I think we should all, where there are barriers, we should identify them. Where financing isn't coming in, use development partners like USAID and others to unlock those barriers so that investment can come in this very important ASEAN power grid.
Thank you so much. Jean?
My takeaway for this is really it's exciting to know that there's been a lot of movements and developments on APG to unlock more renewable power potential for private sector like us to invest in. And for us, it's actually promising so that we can actually tap into other countries that we are not yet in. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If you can join me with the, with the hands to the panelists, please. Thank you very much. So for the panelists, if you could remain here.
Thank you very much. This is amazing panel discussion. Because of the interest time, also we learned a lot about the big task, big hope. And I'd like to invite our DG to close the session and take us to the next steps and way forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I promise I'll be really quick. Coffee is waiting outside. Outstanding session. Super thanks to the presenters and to the panelists. Great presentations. Super rich discussions. You laid out convincingly the benefits of the grid. You also discussed some of the challenges, the real challenges that need to be taken carefully into consideration as we move forward. You touched on the need for partnership and coordination amongst all the stakeholders. As far as ADB is concerned in this regard, I'd like to reaffirm our commitment to work with all of you. We're very interested to take this, the discussion and the project, the grid forward, or do our modest part. We'll provide technical assistance. We stand ready to support and step up our lending program in this area. And we look forward to working with all of you partners. In terms of very briefly next steps and milestones, as far as I understand, while we all keep working away on our preparatory work, importantly, later this month, I think there will be a senior officials meeting in Lao PDR on energy senior officials, and then followed in September, I think, by the ASEAN energy ministers, and we hope that that will be discussed further there. Let me conclude with the repeated, what we heard repeatedly, call for action, and now is the time to invest. I heard one community, one grid, one joy. And with that, I think I want to thank all the speakers, presenters, and all the participants with a big hand of applause. Thank you very much.